Today, I want to take a closer look at my favorite semiconductor company, Nvidia. There are reports that Nvidia is trying to build a huge clouding business and combat some of the big players like Amazon, AWS in this space. So let's take a closer look in today's episode. So as I am recording this episode, Nvidia is sitting at roughly $434. Year to date, the stock is doing amazing thanks to the demand for its AI hardware. The stock is up roughly 203% year to date. So what I want to take a closer look at is there's this report that Nvidia may lease data center space for DGX Cloud services. So for those that are not familiar, DGX Cloud was released on March 21st of 2023, and it originally partnered up with big players like Microsoft, like Google Cloud, and Oracle. One of the persons it did not kind of partner up with was Amazon. So DGX Cloud in a top level view was, you know how Microsoft and all these other services have a clouding solution where you can rent out their computational power. Well, DGX Cloud is very similar to that. DGX Cloud, Nvidia will partner up and have some form of agreement with these cloud providers, create their own AI supercomputer, and have customers be able to choose DGX Cloud. So in theory, NVIDIA was building up their own clouding infrastructure within the inside. I have talked a little bit about this, and I am going to mention it. I'm going to go a little bit more about it in the future.
Finally, I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for their subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
But NVIDIA mentioned that this push of DGX Cloud was never meant for it to compete against cloud server providers because NVIDIA has no intentions of competing with their big partners. What DGX was meant to be was more like a sales team to some extent. DGX Cloud was going to showcase the strength of NVIDIA's AI hardware, and then the kind of partners, Microsoft and Google, they were going to be like, oh, look, you're seeing huge demand for your DGX Cloud system. I know you're going to give me the blueprint. Can you give me the blueprint? I'm going to start creating thousands and thousands of DGX supercomputers, maybe not thousands, but start to create supercomputers because I know there's such a demand. So NVIDIA was using it more as a sales team to some extent to be able to show data to the cloud server providers that, hey, look, this is a demand that's needed out there, and if you want the blueprint, here you go. Now just kind of give me money. I'll give you all the hardware, all the software you need, and we'll both be happy, right? So I did do an extensive video on that many weeks ago. So if you want to watch it, I'll put the link here to really understand how DGX was not a competition based on what NVIDIA's top management said, right? This was on a conference that was on September 5th. But now things are starting to look a little bit different. About a month later, the information reports that NVIDIA has held discussions with at least one data center owner about leasing its own space for its DGX Cloud services. So I do believe if this is true, they are going to be a lot more competition with the cloud server providers. So what this means that NVIDIA is probably going to some of those data center players out there, like I can't remember, Digital Realty, and then there was another one that I always forget about, but it's going, hey, look, I need to rent out some space, I'm going to build out some supercomputers, and I'm going to create my own kind of clouding solutions. If this is true, it is going to compete against cloud server providers like Amazon, like Google, like Microsoft. And I want to say this is not the first time that NVIDIA is really pushing into kind of focusing in the clouding market. We have heard that this company is investing in a lot of startups that are focusing in the clouding market. For example, earlier we did hear about Coreweave. There is a lot of drama about Coreweave, but that's a whole different story that I don't even want to get into. It's definitely a great way to get views, kind of thinking about something like Coreweave and NVIDIA being negative, but no one talks about how Microsoft partners up with OpenAI or how Amazon partners up with Anthropic. It's pretty much the same thing. So again, nothing crazy in my opinion that is happening there. But before we go anywhere else, guys, I do want to say thank you for the support. We just hit 28.2 thousand subs. I'm trying to hit 30,000 by the end of the year. So if you haven't, make sure to hit the thumbs up. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. I do have weekly exclusive semiconductor videos. Click join to learn more about this exclusive membership. If you want to get a special offer, check out fool.com/Jose, free newsletter at josenaharo.substack.com, and free semiconductor news at semiconductorwatch.com. So for those that are not familiar with Coreweave, Coreweave is a GPU cloud company. So you go to coreweave.com and you can rent out NVIDIA's HGX H100s to kind of do forms of cloud computing. Very similar to what you would do with AWS, with Google Cloud, or with Microsoft. And this is not the first time, right? We did see that in July 19th of 2023, NVIDIA was in talks to invest in AI cloud company Lambda Labs. So Lambda Labs, very similar to kind of Coreweave, they also allow you to rent out NVIDIA's H100 GPUs for your own form of AI workloads. They have kind of limited access to GPUs. They also sell infrastructure. So if you want to buy a data center, if you want to buy a desktop, a workstation, you can also buy it here with Lambda. And the great thing is NVIDIA, while they were investing in these kind of cloud computing providers, they also kind of became a preferred buyer of Nvidia. So Nvidia will kind of say, hey, look, you guys we're invested in you. If you guys want to buy our H100 GPUs, if you want to buy our DGX systems, we'll gladly put you on the top of the list, right? So obviously they kind of, this is definitely kind of building a competition against those cloud server providers that I mentioned. And again, this is a great way for Nvidia to, one, grab new customers, but two, also invest in competition and kind of grow in the cloud service providers. Outside of that, we also saw that NVIDIA invested in Inflection AI, announced a $1.3 billion of funding led by current investors, Microsoft and NVIDIA. And for those that are not familiar, Inflection AI, and I'm not sure why it's zoomed in like this, Inflection AI was to build a supercomputer with over 22,000 NVIDIA H100 GPUs. So we definitely see how NVIDIA has been entering this market and is really trying to compete against the cloud server providers. But one way or another, it was more of an indirect way, right? It wasn't completely direct. They weren't out there building their own data centers. Now, if this is true, then it does mean that they're going to compete on a more direct matter. But I don't think that's necessarily a wrong thing, right? Because if we take a closer look at data centers are competing with semiconductor companies. We have Amazon, who has the AWS Trainium. They also have the AWS Inferentia, which are chips that are meant to compete and reduce the necessity of NVIDIA's chips. They're saying, hey, look, NVIDIA, your chips are too expensive. Let me kind of build my own chips, and then I'm going to reduce the amount of orders that I get from you. And Google, for example, is also building the tensor processing unit, right? They've developed this kind of TPU that is meant to help out in certain AI workloads. So NVIDIA, in my opinion, is saying, cool, all right, you guys want to build your own stuff. I'm going to do the same thing. I've invested in plenty of kind of new clouding server providers and I'll put them on top of the list to make sure that they're growing at fast levels. On the other hand, I personally I being NVIDIA, know how to build supercomputers. My hardware is the most important hardware out there right now. So instead of partnering with you guys to kind of build DGX Clouds, since you guys are trying to remove me from the picture right now, maybe I can do the same. So I think this is pretty interesting. I don't know. I'm an NVIDIA shareholder, and if it is true, it is bullish in my opinion. Like I mentioned, we've seen the cloud server providers try to push off NVIDIA one way or another. But in another way, it's like, hey, NVIDIA, are you trying to get too much? Are you trying to bite too much right now at one time? So it definitely comes with some risk. But if it is true, definitely a huge amount of growth opportunity. If it is not true, obviously they still have the top of the line hardware. They're still investing in a lot of other companies. So I do believe they will be okay, even if it's not true. So this is something that I will be keeping an eye out. It's not a reason for me to buy Nvidia stock. Nvidia is already my number one position in my overall portfolio with a market cap of $1 trillion. I do believe the risk to reward ratio is not in my favor. So if I was an investor, this would be times where I would do very, very, very small dollar cost average if I wanted an exposure. But the semiconductor market always more than likely tends to give us buying opportunities. So there is a high probability that we can get a better buying opportunity for Nvidia in the upcoming years, as long as we're patient. But sometimes patience takes too long. So for those reasons, I do believe maybe very, very small dollar cost averaging, if I wanted to kind of get my toes wet, wouldn't be a bad idea. But Nvidia is my number one company, and I don't mind holding off and waiting for a better buying opportunity. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.